Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video, and in this one we're going to be tackling the what we're working on post made and what's happening with the current state of the Lake of Calandra 3.19 League. Now, I've been receiving some information before I read this post since last night. The lack of some information is more than disturbing, and we're not talking about the Force, we're talking about certain minion related information and feedback that has been provided. And I want to tackle that as a segment of itself. But before I go into minions, I do want to talk about some of the other changes in here. And let me just put this straight from the start. I am very, very, very unhappy with what's being presented for us. I also think that it's very important that despite being unhappy about something, that one should keep things civil when presenting feedback and criticism. Because no one's going to pay attention to someone who's screaming at the top of their lungs and cursing anything and anyone has anything to do with it, whilst they're providing their feedback or criticism. Instead, I will try to keep this as civil as I can, as I always do, both on stream and in my Discord and in my guild and everything. So yeah, this is shit. That's the best way I can put it, in the most civil way. So, to elaborate on why I think so, the Arch Nemesis changes. Seems like, yeah, there's a pretty big jump that rises abruptly from campaign into maps. I agree with that. It should definitely be very heavy. However, they're saying that it is unmodified in rare maps, or in red maps, sorry. And all of my feedback is going to be based off the experience I've had with playing with minions. But there's a problem with this in red tier maps as well. That is overtuned like crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I do think that they should maybe look into the red tier maps as well. And this has not so much to do with their HP scaling, because the only thing they're talking about in a lot of these notes and the changes is that they're too tanky. To prevent life values getting out of hand, they will reduce life bonuses for essences and the red beast, and apparently the amount of rare spawning and betrayal content. My problem is not so much the HP, even if that is a problem. It has more to do with the enemies doing tons of extra damage. They're absolutely destroying things. It has a lot to do with their damage output, not so much their survival. And that is not even mentioned in this part whatsoever. And that has a lot to do with minions, which I'll tackle later in this video. The harvest changes, which I'm also very unhappy with, is talking about how they're not dropping any life force. And before I talk about this part here, I do want to say that the whole idea with that the community has been complaining about clicking too much to pick up one wisdom scroll. That they changed so that things would drop fewer times, but when they drop, they would be of higher stacks. Reduces the amount of clicks, which is something the community screamed for many years, and we finally got it, and this was praised. And now they're saying, holy shit, this is now presenting an issue with the way they dealt with the harvest changes. Now, okay, I'm not very happy about it, but I also don't think that we should be complaining about this to the sense that making jokes saying, oh, we fixed RSI by giving you nothing to click on. Okay, it's funny, but again, just try to make sure that we provide feedback and criticism that is actually helpful, right? And I think that it would have been better to have like a baseline drop that maybe each crop would have a standard or baseline drop that will actually happen, and that drop would be scaled off the quantity and rarity, whatever, from the maps, right? Instead of per monster. So maybe that would have been a better choice to fix this. However, the biggest problem I have with the harvest change has nothing to do with this. It actually has to do with this part over here. So basically, they're saying that harvest yield currently scales up to around 10 times higher by the time you are in high maps with Atlas Tree specialization, rewarding you for running higher maps, rolling your maps well and specializing in harvest. We will rebalance the life force yield at lower tier maps so that the league is more rewarding early on, without affecting its yield at higher tiers. But somebody made a test in standard running 190 100 plus quantity maps to get 50,000 life force, which is almost nothing for the harvest crafting. That to me is beyond ridiculous. And I think that maybe with that information, affecting the yield at higher tier maps would be a little bit more important than completely discarding the idea of affecting the yield at higher tiers. Unless, of course, their idea with the harvest changes was to make the changes it did, remove very important crafts from meta crafting and higher end game crafting and mirror crafting. And their solution or their desire and result of these changes is to make people utilize harvest crafts way less than we've done in the past. If that was the purpose, maybe there should have been a statement about that in this post saying, this is because we don't want people to have access to a ton of crafts, so that's why it's going to be not affecting the yield of higher tiers, right? because they seem to be happy with people spending that much pressure and that much focus on farming harvest to essentially get very little rewards, or very little life force in this case, for it. And I think that that would have been better stated, because I'm pretty sure the idea of this was mentioned, but it's not in the patch notes. It's not in this note where they're talking about what we're working on. It would be better for the community, in my opinion, that this was very clear on black and white, promoted to everyone to actually see. That's just my 2 cents on it. Outside of that, we can move on to the Lake of Calandra, where they're saying we're increasing the rewards for both league and non-league encounters throughout the lake, particularly higher map levels and higher difficulties. I think this is a good change. It'll raise the occurrence rate, the regular, not ethereal. The ethereal mist is the one where you can mirror version your own gear, and the regular mist are the ones that spawns a random item that gives you 2 different mirrored versions that you get to choose one from. And I think that this is a fair change that would be nice to see. It makes the league mechanic more interesting. And I think that this quality of life feature is really nice if they could add it. So honestly, out of this note, all of this is actually rather positive. I think this is fine. I really like the idea of it. General item drops is, in the most civil way I can put it, a complete fucking joke. And that is me trying to be as civil as I can. Like, they're, instead of adjusting the drop rates or making something happen to it, they are basically saying that people are reporting the issue. And then they are saying that instead of fixing it, they're basically saying, explaining it or elaborating. This is partially offset because of the monster reward systems that is happening. I do want to say though that I feel like the loot goblins from Diablo, sorry, not the loot goblins, I meant the rares in the game, they actually feel rewarding, because some of them with the RNG of the mods actually explodes into loot, and that's really exciting, and that's fun. I've had a rare dropping me over 20 rare rings. That was crazy cool. It was so amazing to see that. But at what costs? After that one encounter, I haven't seen much. I'm currently level 90 and doing tier 16 maps, and I've had that happen once. Outside of that, the rewards I've been getting has been very disappointing for the entire weekend. And instead of saying the second reason is that they removed a massive historic bonus to quantity and rarity that applied to some league specific monsters, and replaced it with a moderate 2 to 3 times increased item quantity to offset the fact that they often have more life than regular monsters and cannot drop maps. It's like, I don't know what to say about this. It just feels lackluster. But then again, which they are tackling further down the line here, they are saying that, you know, they don't want people to have increased item drops because most of those will be filtered out, right, with their item filters. There have been no reward affecting changes that we were aware of, but we'll be investigating to see if there's any unanticipated consequences from other changes. Okay, so again, they don't really plan on changing anything right now. Our intention with these changes is to modify certain league content that was out of line with other content that was similar reward profile. These changes are more important. We understand why they reduced the overall rewards that players receive. We're going to compensate elsewhere. Note elsewhere. Where we don't want to just increase the raw numbers of items that are dropped. Most items are immediately filtered out. We want to increase the numbers of relevant items drops. This is what gives me some hope for this. It's just that I feel kind of betrayed where this was not stated in the patch notes or anywhere. We just get this shoved onto us on the league launch, and it just turns out to not be good. And then obviously people are asking, hey, has this been play tested? Have they actually really tried this? Which I will talk about with a minion topic I'll get into in a moment. So, I don't know. I like this. I just feel like this would have been pretty clear if this was play tested, in my opinion. But again, I don't know how they play tested, so I can't speak for them. Firstly, we're going to adjust the systems that skews weapon armor base types towards higher level ones so that players find items that are relevant for the level more often. I think this might actually encounter a situation where if you drop rare items of lower base item types, your filter is most likely filtering them out. So it's very likely that we might be actually getting drops that we are filtering out, that a change like this would actually change, so that suddenly we actually see drops happening. So maybe this will be a solution that is going to make it feel less ass. This isn't an increase to overall item drops, just means that you will find more appropriate items more often. Secondly, we're going to apply the same item consolidation approach to we did act bosses a few leagues ago to map bosses. Now, to me, in my opinion, I think this is so weird that this hasn't happened earlier, because map bosses went from many leagues ago, went from being a cakewalk and died immediately to, hey, we are not going to kill the map boss unless we're doing it for the completion bonus, because the map bosses are so freaking tanky, they're not worth the rewards, to us given so much power that it's no longer a problem, but they are not rewarded, they're not worth killing for the most part. And now we're finally getting that change. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens with that, because that's something I wish they would have done much sooner. They will now drop fewer items, but substantially better rarity. This will increase. This will result in you finding more unique items from map bosses. It's worth noting here that a widely shared clip of players were opening an Arcanist box, receiving no items. Basically, there was someone finding no items from an Arcanist box. They're saying that they're going to fix this specific issue. And these changes are not final, but we wanted to communicate our current thoughts immediately rather than wait until patch notes are ready later. The changes will be deployed separately as they're ready over the next few days. We'll continue to monitor feedback and investigate more areas for adjustments. So my biggest problem with this is that there's not a single mention about minions. There is nothing in this page about minions. There's nothing here mentioning the insane overtuned damage approach that we're receiving from enemies. They are talking specifically about Arch Nemesis as them being too tanky. They're talking about the life scaling being too big. My damage output on minion builds has not been that much of an issue despite the nerfs to it. It's actually been pretty fine despite the HP values of enemies. We've actually been able to do tons of damage. That's okay. I like that approach. It's fine. It all looks fine. The problem is that the enemies are so goddamn overtuned, it's hilarious. So to put this into perspective for those of you who missed it, allow me to present you with the stats of Bob the First. Bob the First had about 54,000 HP. He had about 4.9k life per second regenerated. He had 83% all resistances, elemental resistance. He had 75% chaos resistance. He had 56% fist mitigation. He had, I think it was 17% dodge through evasion or evade chance via evasion. And what else was it? He did not have Bone Offering up on this time. This AG, Bob the First, versus a tier 16 Harbinger with 0 damage mods. Dead. Bob the Second versus a tier 16 Tool Breach with 0 damage mods. Dead. Bob the Second stats. Bob the First stats. Bob the Second stats. He had 38k HP plus gear, because I don't know exactly the gear he had. He had 4.6k life per second. He had 75% LE res, 75% chaos res. He had about 60% fizz mitigation and about 15% evade via evasion. These are the stats that killed an Animate Guardian with heavy investments into minion survivability, which was drastically nerfed. Wasn't it 83? No, it was not 83 because I didn't have the mastery when he died on the second one, but I did on the first one, and it was capped. I have investments into resistances. I have defensive resistances on top of this. I'm not even including the fact that he has a ton of energy shield. Both of them had tons of energy shield. The only defensive nodes I'm not taking is the block ones here and the Indomitable Army, because they're not dying to that. I am not running bone unset rings because despite being extremely socket starved on my build, because, well, I need to compensate the minion stats with bone rings, which doesn't have a socket. My ring here has a minion life of a tier 2. This one has a minion life of a tier 2. I can't get much more stats for them. They're used minion shield, meat shield, or using minion life. This one actually didn't have meat shield. Not that it matters because it doesn't scale their defense, but minion life does, which was included in these stats. Versus a tier 16 map with no damage mods makes no sense to me that these guys are even remotely possible, capable of dying versus that level of content. This doesn't obviously include the fact that generic minions that are actually having some struggles in surviving, but I'm okay with that because they can be resummoned. But the Animate Guardian is one of the tankiest minions you can actually bring to the table because you can mitigate a ton of gear defense, damage incoming through gearing that you're choosing to run on him. This guy died in 1 second versus a tool. To give you context, I will show you the clip. But I know that we were very close to beating the all-time record on subscriptions for this stream. Right. So for those of you who missed it, look at the AG, and we play this at 0.25 speed without sound on. Look at how fast he's dying. This is a quarter of the video speed. The only thing hitting him in this case is the tool. He's regenerating almost 5,000 life per second with 75% cold resistance. There is no damage mods here. And that's how fast he dies. My convocation is on cooldown, so there was no way for me to react to actually save him. And it wouldn't surprise me. No, you gotta be fucking... And this is the level of defense that we cannot get much higher in. And we were expected to have this as the baseline for minions. Now, I League started with Chains of Command, which, because of this idiocracy, completely destroyed it. My first enemy guardian died to a regular Harbinger encounter. I can accept that this guy died to the shotgunning to some degree, even though I would arguably say that like the only difference I could have done here is giving him another 8% elemental resistances, which would still made him die approximately 0.4 seconds later, which would still have killed him. I can't give these guys more defense. I've used every tool available in the entire game to make these guys survive, and a non-damage modded tier 16 kills them. This is not okay. And I reached out to GHD raising my concerns before the league launched about things like this. And the answer I received was that it's been play tested. It felt fine for us. You should just, I don't know what to say. You should try it out in when league launches and see how it feels. Well, tell you what, I have play tested it. I have tested it and I don't like it. I don't like it. It's shit. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe. Keep rocking.